The body of this person can grow to such a size that just taking one step could make the ground tremble. They didn't believe there could be an earthquake, but when they saw Hyun, the beloved young master, everyone fell silent. He weighed several hundred pounds, but dreamed of becoming the leader of the martial arts world. Even a mosquito landing on Hyun's neck was enough to make him weary and fall. Kwan's body was torn apart. This broken body was truly unusable. He had to know that in his previous life, he was a martial arts master, and returning this time was to deal with the chaos caused by that murderer. The martial arts world had been stained with blood, and the factions opposing him had been wiped out. His parents also died in the chaos he caused, because he was just a commoner. He was recognized as a disciple by 6 martial arts masters of his own faction and had to undergo hellish training to become the top master. Then he was sent back to the past, but he didn't expect to have to crawl into a fat body, unable to practice martial arts. Returning to the present, he was being treated by Tai Wai Jiang. He was also trying to remember the name of that chaotic lover. He had to get ginseng from Chi Duong. Before that, he had only 6 months. He immediately grew up, leaving only 16 months left for this old man. Tai Wai heard that and felt bitter. However, his father saw him differently when his son woke up. He clung to him like a puppy. He really loved him, but it was difficult like this. Then Hyun even asked to go out for a walk to stay alert. His father angrily ordered someone to bring the largest sedan chair here, specially reserved for him. The sedan bearers had to be the strongest ones. Losing weight like this was impossible. He wanted to be able to walk on his own. His father immediately called for the guards to support him, tears streaming down his face at the sight. Since he was 10 until now, this was the first time he saw his son walk on his own. Who could blame him? He had spoiled him too much. Eating and sleeping all day, not getting as fat as a pig was already surprising. Seeing him walk, it seemed like watching a performance, deeply moving. Only the bearers carrying him felt the weight. Did they want to die? In the following days, he trained diligently, walking a few laps around the courtyard each day. But this 1,000-pound body still showed no sign of change. Sitting on the scale to measure, even a group of pigs climbing on couldn't make Hyun budge a bit. He even directly broke the comforting guard strap. Losing weight wasn't something to be accomplished overnight. It required focus on diet, reducing sugar and starch intake, then eating specific foods and exercising to build muscle. The young master might take a long time to stabilize. At this point, Hyun didn't care about recalling the name of the chaotic lover, but fundamentally couldn't even remember his face. Not a single impression this time. Trongsin seemed completely confused, yet he could still remember other information. This matter was truly strange, but it seemed like he would also appear in Tan and Hui to find the ginseng. Perhaps that opportunity could locate him. Thinking about pressing him there with his unmatched strength, the main character laughed selfishly. After dealing with him, he would have a peaceful life. A dream come true. Ha ha ha. Thinking the young master couldn't lose weight, he was already shaken psychologically, hurriedly running to find the nobleman. They immediately ran over. Zhang Xian, aged 30, participated in the selection exam for Tai Wai appointed by the emperor. He had passed a series of tests to become a Tai Wai at the age of 50, mastering and developing his own medical techniques. He was the key to helping him become handsome with a 6-pack body. He asked if he could formulate various weight loss medicines quickly. If not, it would take up to 3 years. What's the point then? At this point, he came up with a method to help him lose weight quickly. If walking on land didn't work, walking underwater while drinking could also help. Finally, they reached a nearby stream after carrying the sedan chair for a while. When Hyun slipped suddenly while walking, he fell into deep water. Han Vun, still not reacting, thought he was happily swimming. He could hold his breath for a long time, but compared to world-class athletes, it was not impossible. Now realizing he was drowning, Han Vun panicked and tried to save him. But fundamentally, an ordinary person like him couldn't lift Hyun's giant body onto the shore. Meanwhile, he fell into a coma, seeing memories of this body at the age of 2. Clearly, he had gone through terrible experiences. His mother died protecting him. At this moment, a girl managed to pull him ashore to an abandoned house. Xian was about to face his father's wrath after learning everything was caused by Tai Wai Xian. He also prevented Hyun Jonghai's sister from coming to report that her brother had woken up. Then he gave Jang Si the chance to explain. He immediately said it was because of the Namgung noble family's young master. Upon hearing the Namgung family's engagement, he hastily wanted to regain his figure quickly. Then he mentioned the underwater weight loss method, very effective but unnecessary in such deep places like that waterfall. In Hyun's room, he had also woken up to see his beautiful sister, unable to believe he was both chubby and stupid, yet had such a stunning sister. Even her close attendant wasn't ordinary, she easily helped him stand up, as she was the one who had saved him yesterday. The next day, he was carried to the weight loss place. But the servants were strangely happy. It turned out everyone was building a swimming pool for him. A 5-star kiddie pool. This was clearly his sister's idea, he didn't need to go to that dangerous stream anymore. Everyone here was happy to see him walking around and congratulated him. It was clear they had sweated and toiled for these meaningless matters, how could they be happy? He also asked Han Bun about his father, the head of the noble family, a great scholar revered by scholars worldwide. This surprised him, his father's usual appearance didn't quite match. During times of famine, he would open a store to provide food and clothing for everyone. People revered him, and Hyun immediately realized he was born with a silver spoon. Despite doing nothing, he had food, he laughed. Perplexing others. The next day, the swimming pool was completed, and Hyun called for the guards to prepare a large stone ball to tie to his feet for training. He began smashing it with all his strength, but ended up being thrown away by the force when he threw the stone ball down. What are you breaking for? You're acting like the Titanic submarine sinking to the bottom of the lake. You're actually trying to cultivate internal energy so that moving underwater will be more convenient. To prevent this, the masters have created a method of internal energy cultivation called the spiritual Qi heart pill method. Instead of channeling Qi into the abdomen, it focuses on the heart, using blood vessels to transport Qi according to the principles of practice. Finally, you succeeded. Now, the internal energy has begun to transfer. Now you can feel the flow of water, and then manipulate it according to your will. Next, you use the most powerful technique of the Shaolin 100 forms. The God's Fist, striking the surface of the water, causing a terrifying shockwave. Afterwards, you crazily cultivate under the lake, quickly absorbing knowledge from past lives. You've already reached the level of Tuk Truong Fap within a month. It's time to return. The first thing to do is to weigh yourself, comparing your weight to the number of pigs. If even weight loss doesn't work, how will you face your master? This time, your weight has clearly decreased without breaking. You laugh wildly, then rush to the butler to celebrate. It's like your first victory in this life. You carefully compare the effectiveness of your internal energy cultivation through continuous mental practice, which is different from absorbing the energy of spiritual herbs and animals. This is a leap forward in one go. Therefore, you absolutely cannot overlook the Qi Duong ginseng, but before that, you have to absorb some other spiritual medicines. In the following days, he continued to absorb spiritual medicines through diet, along with physical exercises with his guards. 2 months quickly passed, and he was still underwater, practicing martial arts. A powerful strike caused a tremendous shockwave. Hovi Hongvun couldn't believe it, this was the Tuk Truong Fap. But when his father heard about it, he flew into a rage, accusing him of being a meat-eating worm. Then he had him locked up, claiming it was for his own good, as he had worked too hard for the young master. His father was proud of his beloved son's strength in martial arts, although he wanted Hyun to focus on academics. However, he still supported his martial arts training. His face became serious as he prepared to send a letter to the royal court. The next day, his father gave him a copy of the Tsan Kan on Thursday, honoring it as the supreme secret handed down by the emperor himself. He didn't know that his father had to use flattery to obtain it. Only then did he have the emperor's heart, no longer as before. His heart was now occupied with state affairs, forgetting the gods, as if sulking with a lover. Not only that, but his brother-in-law also taught him martial arts. His name was Jamian, the husband of his sister. He boasted that the Wu family was the most renowned martial arts family in Hobak City. However, he couldn't reveal his true strength and had to kneel down to accept his brother-in-law as his master. Father, he feels touched by how polite his son has become lately. Then when he tries to stand up later, he can't, and has to ask for his brother-in-law's help. In the following days, he trains with his brother-in-law, and he feels like a different person now, daring to challenge even his brother-in-law. Hyun can't bear it and calls for his sister to intervene. The joint training is haunting him, as he's either acting as a master or understanding the basic points as a disciple. He thought it was a joke until Hyun mocked him. He reluctantly agrees and seals his internal energy to make the fight more balanced. But he still feels it's not enough and ties his own hands before facing Trong Dulong. Their speed and strength are evenly matched, but Hyun's body is too heavy to keep up. His brother-in-law is surprised at how seamlessly they're able to combine techniques. Hyun's strength is limited, so he aims for quick victories. He easily knocks down his brother-in-law, who then asks for mercy, but is knocked unconscious. He has to be bandaged up and can't scratch his itching head, while his wife finds it amusing that Hyun is so formidable. She always said Hyun was a martial arts prodigy, and now she's proven right. Meanwhile, Hyun strolls through the streets, witnessing people's joy, which he hasn't seen before because of the chaos caused by the Chaos Child. Everyone lives in fear and suffering. And when they see Hyun, they're both amazed and wary. How can he walk around so calmly? Yet afterward, they invite him back and give him many gifts. He had to say, "I'm just taking a stroll to lighten my spirits, yet you all make me feel heavier," but the kindness of everyone still couldn't be ignored. Despite his attempts to resist, he became even more determined to save the martial world. Only kind-hearted people like them wouldn't suddenly die. At this moment, he noticed the martial artist trailing him. The man seemed to think he was being too conspicuous, so it was surprising how a fat guy like him could detect him, but Hyun had been behind him all along without his notice. When the man attacked, his strength was extraordinary. While he lay sprawled on the ground, he fled. Upon regaining consciousness, he asked where the guy had gone to reassure everyone. Though in great pain, he pretended not to care, then resolved even more to train and become stronger. Meanwhile, his father and sister were discussing how he wanted to advance and become a renowned general. However, it seemed too early for this, and his changes were surely due to being jilted by Namgung Ra. Being someone who disliked marriage from a young age, Hyun's father wanted to propose again, hastily. As the Namgung family's representatives were still contemplating how to refuse politely, Hyun was seeking information about ginseng in the rodent district. However, despite his efforts, he couldn't find any leads. Only from a local did he learn that it had been over 20 years since the scoundrel disappeared from Inbin County. The landlord had built houses for the nomads and let them rent land. Hyun also wanted to find the gang's hideout to gather information. Who would have known that the scoundrel would now be found in such luxurious places? At the same time, the landlord Namgung Ra, the Honshu, was at the division headquarters of the faction to study the documents of the green-haired individual, who information about the noble son under special management status would not be dealt with until approval was received from the Central Dispatch. The Central Dispatch had directly classified information about the noble son as Bongbei. Because the opposing party was rich and influential, Namgung Ra directly threw a pile of gold coins, but still didn't succeed. He had to send a request to the next dispatch, then directly removed the ring. It was the Emperor's seal. Whoever possessed this artifact would receive protection from the Namgung family. At the same time, Hyun had also reached the division headquarters. But this headquarters was too luxurious, and the hangout was a luxurious building. The person at the door even called him the fat guy and said there were no guests for him. Despite the ridicule, Hyun ignored it and went in with his imposing identity. He was afraid of the consequences, but then this guy hit him. "You're a fat pig now, huh? Clearly, I told you to step back." Hyun was truly angry now. "Do you know who my father is? Get ready for a beating, you coward." Outside, the division chief had handed over all the relevant documents related to Heel to the landlord Namgung Ra. But outside was too noisy now, and Hyun was engaged in a fight with that guy. He had to admit that he underestimated the chubby guy. How could someone weighing several hundred kilograms move so fast? He used the unyielding sword, but with his mediocre skills, he couldn't do anything. Hyun only needed an apology, and he would spare him, but the guy got even angrier and attacked him. "Why do you dare to use such filthy language to talk about Namgung Ra?" He drew his sword threateningly, but then Hyun swiftly counterattacked, leaving the bodyguard of Namgung Ra screaming in pain. At that moment, Namgung's young master also appeared, and upon seeing the situation, he immediately recognized his master's thunderous might technique. But first, he had to stop it. Dealing with it directly with his chubby body was impossible. Thunderous Might was a martial art that amplified power by twisting the energy source in the fist. He wanted to use his inner energy to reverse it, but Hyun realized he had lost focus. He was his sword instructor, that's why Hyun was familiar with this technique. But in the end, he was still knocked away. The guy thought that the chubby guy in front of him couldn't simply disperse the power of Thunderous Might. Hyun struggled to stand up, his eyes emitting hostility. But the subordinates rushed to protect him, just as he passed out. Meanwhile, the division chief also realized that the chubby guy in front of him was the noble's son. Then he rushed over to provide aid, loudly berating whoever dared to attack the noble's son like this. Everyone's eyes were filled with hatred as they looked at Namgung's young master helplessly, then to Namgung Ra, the master. At this moment, he also understood everything and tore apart the book containing information about Hyun. Now it was useless. Then he had to endure his father's wrath. If Namgung wasn't Hyun's future brother-in-law, he would have dealt with him already. The head of the faction could only kneel down and plead for forgiveness, even though this matter was unrelated to the faction. Then he transmitted a message to Namgung Ra, advising him to kneel down and apologize because the opponent was an emperor, someone highly respected. He also shouted, "Our son-in-law, we need to go to the palace." Seeing this, Namgung Ra immediately feared Sun Voi and knelt down to beg for mercy. But the patriarch's anger was high, daring to hurt his beloved son, he was determined to seek retribution. He was still unconscious, not knowing life or death. At this moment, Sol rushed out again. However, his appearance seemed somewhat lacking. Everyone was surprised as his sister forced him to look cute. The leader of the faction saw him charging again and thought he was quite talented. Taking a punch from Namgung's young master was nothing to him. It was clear provocation, but he didn't care. He went directly to Namgung Ra as a representative of Hyun's seniority. Although he was only 17. One had been waiting for this day for a long time, striking his face directly, although it hurt, Nam Sung couldn't do anything. He knew that in the future, Nam Sung would become a sword king, one of the main disciples of the 6 holy paths, and also his master, but the old man was a bit eccentric now. His hobby was to torture his younger brother with various training locks in the dungeon. Now he had the chance for revenge. Of course, he had to do it. Before the battle, he lost focus because he was deeply moved by his master's tears. But while he was still delighted to have the opportunity to save the world with the Sword King's help, everyone sat down to discuss. Namgung Ra hadn't figured out how to refuse the marriage proposal yet, but Sol calmly stated his rejection. He said he was busy training to save the world and didn't have time to get married. He dismissed the forced marriage, imposed by promises from previous generations without mutual consent, as wrong. Even though he had lived a buried life in the land of Anben with a weak body, he wondered when he would escape the life of a frog at the bottom of a well. Ideally, he should bear the burden of the kingdom, dedicating his strong and youthful body and spirit to caring for the people. The emperor, his father, panicked upon hearing this, as the martial world was full of thugs loitering around street corners, hinting at Namgung Ra. They dared not speak further and left directly. No one objected, so it was considered that the two had agreed to end the marriage matter. At this point, he called for the leader of the faction to inquire about information on Ginseng Chi Duong. He wanted to know about the current martial world situation and make his old masters pay for their actions from 5 years ago. He believed that they must pay the price, as he said that the martial world was divided into 3 main factions: orthodoxy, evil, and demonic. They didn't pose a major threat then, but 10 years later, they could cause chaos. It was all because of that troublemaker, Han Lone. His eyes became dangerously sharp as it was time to take on disciples. "You just wait, Nam Sung," he chuckled. The next day, he began training again, causing his guards to worry. Clearly, he had been knocked unconscious the previous day, and they wanted to advise him to rest and take care of his health. His sister also came to see what was happening. "Why won't you rest and take care of yourself?" she asked. But he insisted on not resting and taking care of himself. Huan, his bodyguard, saw his sister's guards starting to worry. His sister also informed him that the martial world was very dangerous, as their mother had died in the martial world. It was a wound that was never mentioned, yet he still wanted to dive into it. Hyun told his sister that he was no longer as soft as before, and whenever he encountered trouble, he could handle it without worry. She was surprised by this 180-degree change. "You've grown up," she said, realizing that this was the feeling of family that he had never experienced in his past life. Finally, the time had come for him to re-enter the martial world. From being a chubby boy, he had become a handsome six-pack man, which worried his father greatly. Because he had been chubby since childhood, his father was used to seeing him like that, and now he was worried that he looked too thin. He wanted to go out and explore the world, but his father strongly objected. Instead, he insisted on going to Tan and Hui to find ginseng qi duong. His father said they didn't need it. But he insisted that he would return safely. His father couldn't stop him, only agreeing to let him go. Meanwhile, he was very happy to finally have the freedom to act as he did in his previous life. But as soon as he opened the door, a grand carriage was already prepared, with 20 guards as escorts, ensuring his safety. He actively instructed his bodyguard Huan to arrange for someone to accompany him to Tan and Hui. This time, he was going on official business and didn't want everyone to know. Now, he needed to separate from this group of guards and think for a moment. Finally, he found a way and called out to everyone, "It's already late. How about we rest for a day and set out tomorrow?" Then he suggested inviting everyone for a drink. The steward also had to ask for approval. The two of them drank until late into the night, and even his sister's guards, who had come to bid farewell, joined them. However, when they heard their drunken voices, they left, unaware that Hyun had quietly slipped away, and the steward had been drugged by him. It wasn't alcohol, but a toxic substance that temporarily dispersed his internal energy, so he couldn't move until morning. This was the medicine the physician had given him for protection. As he was about to leave, he encountered his sister coming towards him. She immediately hugged him tightly and reminded him to take care of his health, absolutely avoiding any danger. If he ever felt too exhausted, he could always come back, as she and their father would always be there for him. The next day, he arrived at a small village where the locals mistook him for a criminal or a dog thief, so he had to disguise himself as a local resident from Inbin district named Zindigan, a former imperial guard. "He came here to find something for me, his beloved disciple." Next, he asked if they had noticed any glowing red stones in the wilderness, but they didn't understand. An old man then told him that he had seen it several times while wandering in the mountains at sunset. There was a rock that reflected the sunlight and emitted a red glow, resembling a beam of light. This place, deep within the wilderness, was called the Tower of the Precious Peak, and the old man cautioned him not to go there because it was the territory of the Nine Dragon sect, not ordinary bandits. They were extremely ruthless and would stop at nothing. At this moment, Hyun was increasingly certain that ginseng qi duong was there because no one would ever go to the Nine Dragon sect. Then, he asked the old man to lead him to the Nine Dragon sect. Initially, the old man was afraid, but when he saw Hyun's pleading and almost crying eyes, he was persuaded and agreed. So, they set off deep into the forest. Eventually, they arrived there, but Hyun couldn't let the old man be in danger, so he left him to return to the village and didn't forget to express his gratitude. As the sun was setting, a red light appeared, which was the ginseng qi duong. Hyun swiftly crossed the stream, thinking that if the bandits appeared, he could fight underwater, which would give him an advantage. Finally, he reached the bandits' hideout but was reluctant to use force. Now, it was time to use his spiritual energy. However, he discovered a thug beating a woman, while a child cried nearby. He had to restrain himself from taking drastic action, but eventually, he couldn't hold back and delivered a punch to knock him out. Following that, he dealt with the other thugs to rescue the villagers imprisoned by the Nine Dragon sect. Everyone listened attentively as he explained how they could escape. Then, he asked how many people were in the sect, and he was told there were over 50, including some skilled martial artists, making them formidable opponents. He could only stall for time and create an opportunity for them to escape. One of the bandits who came to check was knocked out before he could react. First, he had to deal with the guard at the observation tower, striking swiftly with a single blow that could knock him out. This was a signal for everyone to flee and create more chaos. He also set fire to a nearby house where the bandits were sleeping, causing them to wake up in panic. They thought it was a fire and tried to escape, but he intercepted them, claiming himself as the arsonist. He challenged them to fight, knowing that direct confrontation with their numbers would be difficult, so he had to take them out one by one. In this situation, he could only rely on his martial arts skills to defeat them gradually. Seeing the fire, they panicked, realizing they had fallen into a trap. If their leader found out, they would all be doomed. Most likely, everyone would escape as fast as they could, not wanting to die. Meanwhile, Hyun's spiritual energy was depleted, and his body began to falter. He needed to buy more time for everyone to safely escape. Suddenly, he was struck by an attack from a group of 5, all skilled in this type of martial arts, though somewhat dull. Then, more people surrounded him. Hyun confidently stepped forward, challenging them to come at him. He never feared a fight. The bald-headed leader of the 9-Dragon sect, known as San, found him interesting and wanted to recruit him. Hyun sat down to buy time to recover his spiritual energy, making it difficult for the bandits to recruit talent. Despite their strength, they lacked the agility he possessed, making him a suitable candidate. The leader found this strange. Clearly, the man in front of him had no internal energy, yet he was sitting as if meditating too much. Is it hallucination, father? Finally, he managed to partially restore his spiritual energy, becoming formidable. He told him, "How can you work under a dog?" The leader was immediately angered, and his followers rushed to attack him, intending to overpower him and tear him apart. Despite being outnumbered, he fought back fiercely, even though he was thrown around and injured. Though they were not strong individually, their coordinated attacks were like a pack of wolves. Even a lone lion would struggle against them. Hyun had to take a risk. This time he used the 8 Immortals technique, easily overcoming them. Even the leader was taken by surprise by his sudden movements and was swiftly dealt with using the Flying Heavens invisible technique. However, he only managed to injure him, as his strength was also depleted. He could only fall down the cliff to escape. As he fell, he made sure to raise his hand to provoke the leader. His subordinates rushed in to report the body inside the prison house, only to find 3 people. They realized he had been stalling for time to allow everyone to escape. Despite being enraged, they knew they had to catch him. At that moment, he didn't use water, but his speed was still too fast, risking hitting the bottom first. Fortunately, it stopped just in time. Now, he found himself in a swirling vortex, darker than a dog. Is he going to die here? But resisting was futile. He had to go with the flow, then eventually used the King Kong technique to finally surface and catch his breath. At this moment, he felt the spiritual energy surging within him, reacting like ginseng. He directly went to pick it because its appearance resembled that of a child, hence the name. Then he carefully scanned around and smirked. You hunting dogs are finally slower than me. From now on, nothing will go your way. He then bit into it, feeling exhilarated as the spiritual energy filled his body. He crazily devoured it all and then sat down to absorb and restore his strength. Meanwhile, the caretaker was searching for him, but Hyun didn't use his real name, making it difficult to track him down. Just recalling a few days ago when he was still idling in bed, the homeowner came and struck him in the face. Now the caretaker realized Hyun had left. The caretaker's anger was subdued by the intervention of others, but he couldn't keep his small life. He had to flee while being shot at. Returning to the group Hyun rescued, they were directed by the old man to return to their village. He also inquired about Hyun, the young man in bandages, but with no results. Meanwhile, the minions of the 9-Dragon camp searched everywhere but couldn't find Hyun. Suddenly, someone emerged from the waterfall, promising to help Hyun. They came to fetch him, but they needed to clearly identify his appearance. At this point, he looked too handsome for them to recognize. The previous day's disguise made them think he was just talking nonsense, pretending to borrow a dry shirt to wear, but they didn't give in. Instead, they ended up being fooled, as his shirt was too dirty. Next, none of them had clothes on, just shivering under the cold sky. Then he lightly swung his sword, causing one of them to fall into the water. The whole group immediately panicked. They wanted to flee, but how could they be so fast? He slaughtered them, and only then did he look down at the water, admiring his handsome face. Indeed, the smooth and shiny skin was probably due to the effect of Dong Tu Sam. He even continued to indulge by the lake, reluctant to leave. Suddenly, he heard cries of pain from afar, where the fleeing people were being caught again. Not far away, the old man who had guided him was being ruthlessly beaten by them. They stopped abruptly when they saw Hyun. At this moment, Hyun made a strange gesture, sitting cross-legged on the bridge. He wanted to play snowball with them, but this strength was no different from a cannonball. He swiftly defeated one after another, using a unique sword technique called piercing clouds, breaking seas from the Vodang sect. They couldn't recognize him due to his incredibly handsome appearance. After seeing the kind old man who had been beaten while guiding him, Hyun became truly angry. He swiftly cut one of them in half with his sword and then approached the old man. Though his appearance had changed, his eyes remained the same. The old man immediately recognized Hyun using spiritual energy to heal him. Although he couldn't heal completely, soothing him was much better than nothing. Then he called someone to carry the old man, instructing them to go straight back home. They were not to return here today, the Nine-Dragon camp would no longer exist. Hyun proceeded to attack their stronghold, shouting the name of their leader, San. You dog. He is confident because he has broken through the realm, and now his chi can be used limitlessly. However, spiritual energy is different from internal energy, it can cut and destroy everything. One of them, still barking, dared to cause chaos here, but he was swiftly dealt with by Hyun, moving at lightning speed. He rushed towards them, countless arrows shot at him, but he blocked them all. The bald leader had to appear at this moment. Hyun had returned, even more formidable than before. He swiftly dealt with them all. Just then, the familiar voice of the caretaker echoed. He had brought the people here to eliminate the Nine-Dragon camp, and his martial skills were not bad either. Although he was a fighter. The leader told his men not to fear fighting, yet he himself fled. How could he let this troublemaker escape so easily? He didn't recognize Hyun's new appearance from cosmetic surgery, but when he saw his raised middle finger, he knew, and grew even more terrified. How could Hyun become so strong overnight? Now he realized the immense power of Hyun. Naturally, the only path for a skilled person was to kneel down and beg for mercy. Whatever Hyun wanted, he would comply, offering money, gold, beautiful women, or even his own life. Hyun had never spared anyone before, always preying on the weak. If he had ever spared anyone, he hadn't stopped until now. Had he ever thought about seeking forgiveness from others? Before he could finish his thoughts, he was knocked out. Now, after dealing with the small fries, the caretaker arrived, but he didn't recognize the person in front of him, who turned out to be his own young master. He even thought Hyun had some grudge against the Nine-Dragon camp. Then he asked about his young master, laughing mockingly. Our young master is also around the same age as the young heroes, with a similar stature and quite a stubborn personality. Back then, he was someone who didn't care about manners and didn't regard anyone highly. Moreover, he used to eat a lot like a cow. These words are not disrespectful towards him, it's clear that he wants to die after finding out you're the young master, then unexpectedly changed his tune. During the time we didn't see him, the young hero has become quite a beauty. In fact, from the beginning, I recognized the caretaker, advising him to go home, but Hyun still had unfinished business. He had to kill the traitorous lover. The caretaker directly brought out the bow and rope, wanting to take him home. Of course, that wasn't cooperative. He was still planning to escape, but got tied up by him and dragged back. When he kissed, he released a force that surprised everyone. In just a few months, the young master had become so strong. After that, everyone was about to attack him, but they couldn't defy the master's wishes. At that moment, the old caretaker arrived here. Thanking him for saving his life, he also informed him that the hostages had left safely. They were very grateful this time, he had saved many people. However, Hyun had exhausted too much energy just now. The caretaker tied him up and brought him back, shouting incoherently. The peace of the martial world lies in our hands now. We must deal with this troublemaker. But the caretaker still thought he was just bluffing, then knocked him out. Mr. Hong reminded everyone not to boast about the young master's achievements, because the more famous he becomes, the more enemies he'll attract. At this moment, an old man with long hair is standing where Dong Tu Sam was, but he's nowhere to be seen. Clearly, this is the gift the old man offered to the young master. Who dares to snatch it? He exuded a terrifying aura, then delegated to his subordinates the task of finding the intruder. If they dare to steal from Dong Tu Sam, even if it's me who's affected, I must recover it. Not only that, the family and relatives of the thief must also share the same tragic fate. All those involved with him must be eliminated. This old man is too cruel. Meanwhile, the thief is being taken home, and I'm still regretting, This should have been an opportunity to kill that evil scoundrel and enjoy the life of a wealthy man, but instead, he's being taken home. However, this time, I successfully stole his belongings according to my past life's memory. Next will be the second spiritual object. A legacy from 1,000 years ago. Tan and Hui is indeed a prosperous city, where my father has also arrived. I'm still waiting for his warm embrace, but he runs to Mr. Hong in anger, saying, "Why did you play with us? Where's Hyun?" The caretaker immediately points at me, making everyone foolish, then angrier. "Are you mocking me, you handsome brat? How could you be my son?" He was a chubby and cheerful child. When I called him, he was silent. "Are you really confessing? Then, go and rebuild your house." Nam Gung Ra, the owner, after knowing that Hyun single-handedly destroyed the Nine Dragons camp, will be even more shocked, unable to believe it. He thought his subordinates were lazy. Anyway, he's the only child who will inherit everything from the family, and he's talented. After losing weight, that child is like an uncut gemstone. Next, it's time to think about the marriage between the two families. The next day, Nam Gung, the elder, and Hyun's father were discussing whether he should participate in martial arts competitions. But if he could find a good master and be trained, he might even surpass a famous general. He might even have his name recorded in history as a legendary general, a pillar of the dynasty. Wherever that master is, it's not necessarily someone currently known to him. Maybe he's right in front of him, or perhaps he's the Sword King Nam Kung Trangayon. Nam Gung Ra is also one of the long-standing prestigious families in the martial arts world. If he borrows Nam Gung's name, he'll have more opportunities to join the martial arts world. Furthermore, Hyun could completely leave his family and have a period of freedom. Later, the two elders began to discuss marriage prospects, which made Hyun feel uncomfortable. His father mentioned that the king has been deciding on the succession recently, perhaps wanting his beloved to be by his side, accompanying the crown prince. So entrusting the son here makes perfect sense. The next day, he left for Vietnam to return home, accompanied by numerous instructions and promises from Hong, who acted just like his father, making him reluctant to die. Then he asked Hyun to follow him. They took a tour around the Nam Gung family estate, then climbed the city wall to gaze at the land. Indeed, the Sword King could make the void tremble with each step. Even his previous master couldn't reach this level. Then he asked Hyun to climb up to the roof like him, thinking that the other side must be testing him. Though he couldn't step as confidently as the old man, he could still leap onto the roof gracefully. It turns out the Nam Gung family estate manages a vast land, isn't that right? I thought he was going to make me run around here to train, but instead, he said this is the family fortune. When I heard that, I almost fell flat on my face. Indeed, the Sword King's thoughts are different from ordinary people's. He told me I would have a share of this place's assets, meaning he wants me to marry Nam Gung's granddaughter. It's a clear dowry proposition. He could have just said it directly, but he made me wander around from morning till now. This master is really good at rhetoric. I tried to decline, but he wouldn't give up. And if I insist, he'll add more spice to it. What I lack the most is money. Next, he even wanted to entrust the entire Nam Gung estate to me. All I had to do was accept his granddaughter. Which is already too much for me. But there are still many things I need to do, and I can't get married so soon like this. He even said the whole Anbin district is peaceful and prosperous. Besides, the emperor respects my father so much that every time they meet, he rewards him with gold, silver, and precious jewels. So even if I were to leave the Nam Gung estate, I wouldn't have any reason to decide to get married, right? I thought he was going to teach me martial arts, so I was really looking forward to it. But the next day, the master woke me up very early to practice swordsmanship. This is the emperor's sword technique, the next level of swordsmanship, and he showed me countless techniques. They all look mysterious. He only stopped when he got tired. Even though these martial arts are only passed down to direct descendants of the family, if you agree to get married, I will pass them all on to you. While I was thinking about sneaking away, he stuck to me like glue, persuading me to learn the Kung martial arts, which have been accumulated for hundreds of years, and each technique has profound meaning. But I just said, I can tell just by looking at it. Let me show you, then he picked up a planting tool. Anyway, Nam Gung Ra's martial arts had been trained by his previous life's master for a long time. He continued to demonstrate the techniques he had just shown, causing him to freeze, then immediately become angry, shouting, "Where did you learn Namgung swordsmanship? Didn't you just practice with a fan? Did you learn it to this level with just one look? Indeed, a genius among thousands." Even more intrigued, he insisted on arranging a marriage between me and his granddaughter at all costs. At the same time, the black-cloaked group had arrived in Tan and Hui. They bought some information about the robber Don Tu Sam, not knowing that it was just his past life's name. The next day, Namgun's young master came to find Hyun to learn Namgung's heart technique, but he was still sleeping. He completely didn't believe the talents that grandfather had recounted, thinking that this guy could learn those techniques with just one look. He arrogantly challenged Hyun with what he had endured in his past life, wanting to hide this identity for a long time. He even tried to provoke him, but he immediately got angry. He claimed to be a master and was courteous to him, so why was he so arrogant? Isn't he the most arrogant person I've ever met, considering himself the best? His face was flushed, full of anger, and he even mocked him. You shouldn't provoke someone who was once known as the seventh righteous sword king. As he mastered the 7 types of human emotions and turned them into martial arts. Therefore, when the weather is sunny, the mood is not good for him, and when it rains, the mood is still not good. He would wander around aimlessly, feeling down. In a moment of crying, when a day has 24 hours, the mood changes 12 times, causing him to constantly suffer, looking miserable. Now is the opportunity for him to seek revenge. When he uses the vanguard martial art technique, his speed immediately closes in on his opponent. His temperament is like a fierce warrior, ready to show the difference between imitated martial arts and true martial arts. Although the opponent may have some skill, it's still like a cat compared to him. When he swiftly turns 180 degrees and delivers a blow, he can immediately disrupt the opponent's technique, then rush forward to punch him. Despite having defensive internal energy, he is pierced by this blow into a vulnerable spot. This direct punch causes him to collapse to the ground, finally admitting that this person is truly a genius. But it's not over yet. Hyun's face is still cruel, and when he approaches, only then does he hear his desperate cries. Finally, he understands the emotions of his master when Tan Min was really cruel, and even calls him later for regular private training. This is clearly physical torture, enduring 10 consecutive days of intense training, enduring hardship. Finally, Namgum's young master has become much stronger, but still contains resentment. Being subjected to this torment is enough, and it's time for him to go out and do something. At that moment, the bad guys are disseminating information about Jin Yin through a coincidence board. Recently, someone appeared, Yu Hyun, the only son of Yu Sun, who is currently in the room of the Namhain family. They then dispatched subordinates to observe him, while Hyun was buying a bunch of books, feeling miserable. He was born into a good family, but has never experienced poverty or serious illness. This is the only way to approach anyone in the That Tin group. Those people are watching him, and their numbers are not small. Suddenly, he was intercepted by a group of thugs at the street corner, demanding protection fees for this area. Although this person is skilled in internal energy, if he uses it, he will immediately be detected and have to endure a painful blow. Namgun's young master wants to rush forward, but he is stopped by On. Not everything in this world is like in books. This is not our business, so there's no need to get involved. Hopfi is the territory of the Namgun family, so other sects will not be able to influence anything. Only those loafers left behind will fight. Until they leave, those loafers will reveal their true strength. The terrifying aura emanating from him forces everyone to kneel down and beg for mercy. But maybe someone can survive. Everyone else has died tragically, leaving only one person who fled fast. The next day, Namgun's old man was very angry because his granddaughter, Hiha, refused to marry. She had gone to the martial arts area of the 4 factions. This letter was written before, and then his anger was poured onto his son's head. If there is no other way, he can only bring Hyun there. But when he ran to him, he immediately noticed something unusual. It was clear that Hyun was teaching his nephew, while he was crying and swinging his sword. Namgun's old man approached, and both stopped. He asked Hyun if he was teaching swordsmanship, but he just said they were testing each other a little. It's impossible to reveal their identities, but Ryo Zeon's sword technique is different from ordinary sword techniques. If he doesn't learn from someone, how can he use that move? This is the lost sword technique. He seemed to have self-realized it. This could be said to be a way of using swordsmanship that contains his emotions. He gradually understood Nam Gunra's swordsmanship. It is engrossed in ecstasy, needing to change to suit the new era. Just then, a subordinate rushed in to report urgent news from the gang that had just arrived. It seems that last night's gang encounter must be related to something, and he also took advantage of this opportunity to go out for a stroll. Just in time, those wicked guys hadn't had a chance to strike yet, so they flocked in. If Hyun went to a quieter place, he could strike there. And Bend district is very prosperous. He had a feeling of homesickness, not light at all. Then he cautiously checked around and indeed was being followed. The wandering person who was beaten yesterday was now in a conspicuous appearance, indicating there was a problem. He might be related to the gang case. Last night, he suddenly ran into the dead-end alley. Then he appeared on the rooftop, wanting to know why they had been following him since last night. It started then, right? Your expression seems to indicate so. But why target me? He secretly thought it might be related to Dong Tu Sam, and they were also careful about his identity as the son of a former prince. If they killed him, it would cause a big problem. Are you the one who took Dong Tu Sam? I'm not stupid enough to admit that I took him. Besides, even if one can use Dong Tu Sam, their strength could be very strong, but I don't sense anything from this kid. They couldn't even sense my aura. At this point, I've realized that these guys are likely under the chaos of AI Tuesday. Now they're trying to leave, but I won't let them go. I'm very curious about what they're up to. Then a group of people rushed up wanting to subdue me, but I kicked the leader, who then collapsed. It's clear now that the guy in front has no internal energy, so why is he so strong? Facing a group of martial arts imposters is very disadvantageous for me. I caught one and ran away, then threw him to destroy a large house. I want them to follow me here. The gang won't let this matter rest. They had to fight quickly to win, rushing to kill people to silence them, not knowing that I'm quite skilled in combat. I had countless stones ready in my hands, then threw them in a continuous barrage, easily defeating them. I caught one suddenly, and the atmosphere here became unusually thick, likely due to that leader, as he eliminated all evidence by ending the lives of all his subordinates before retreating. But they might still chase. Hyun is behind, moving at the fastest speed to hunt down, along with Nam Gun-ra's people and the gang, who have also arrived here. The leader secretly thought that if caught, it would cause a disaster. He took out a hidden weapon from his robe, intending to attack me secretly, but Hyun disappeared. Next, I punched him hard, and he fell to the ground. Only now did he realize that Hyun had always hidden his true strength, but only the victor had the right to ask which organization he belonged to. He, of course, refused to obediently confess. Perhaps his subordinates had all committed suicide by now, and even if he died, he would have to take me with him. Alright, if you want, I'll end this in one strike. He thought I was bluffing. Waiting for him to close the distance, Hyun took his life. At this moment, he seemed motionless. I'll show you what true powerlessness is. When the sky is calm and the wind is still, it's the moment before the storm. What I'm about to use can withstand the entire sky, relying solely on the energy of the body. One strike can defeat him. This is the ultimate martial art of the Shaolin, seemingly simple, but actually having hundreds of moves. Here, torture is impossible. We must take him back to Namgun-ra. At this moment, members of the gang have arrived, wanting to meet him. They confirm his identity, then say all matters will be handled by the gang. The gang leader can already see that the defeated person is a master but was defeated by a kid, which is extraordinary. He also revealed the reason we were investigating. We were targeting a small branch of the gang. And both we and they are the perpetrators. But why is the young master fighting them? It seems they're chasing someone else. Perhaps they've mistaken us for someone else. It's clear that he's hiding something, but the old man can't directly ask, and I can't just stand by. How can I make this work this time? Being in the shadows with countless eyes watching, the collective strength of the masses is not insignificant, and the gang members keep digging for secrets, which may pose difficulties. Saving time like this is quite beneficial. When the old man hears the power behind them, he becomes excited and wants to hand over the person to them, but that's not going to happen. The gang can't do anything more, and we're already overwhelmed fighting them. There are injuries all over, and then we head back to Namgun's young master, but he refuses to cooperate at all. Thought I was about to take a hit again. This guy needs to calm down and think. Can't you see our master is in a difficult situation? Please, come on. This is a matter of the gang's reputation, I tell you. Finally, he agrees, but when they find out his identity, they'll have to notify me. That night, I was cautious, thinking there was still another 6 months until he got a lead on the second mystical creature, the Hong Duk herb in the that muck. But everything changed when I got hold of the Dong Tu Sam. Since he didn't get the Dong Tu Sam, he might act faster to get the second mystical creature. The next day, I told the master that I wanted to join Vo Min to gain more experience. This made him very happy, and I will also send a message to High Air to help my son, so let's meet and talk more often to bond. This old man truly hasn't given up. Then he calls the young master to come with me. Grandpa was still planning to oppose, but the main character immediately agreed before packing his luggage to leave. He didn't forget to mention quietly that there seemed to be other members of the five elements, right? They are representatives of the righteous sex in the martial world, rumored to be very beautiful, which the old master would immediately panic to hear. He summoned everyone for an emergency meeting, and then he and Rion set off on the chosen path. Traveling by water was also very dangerous. If unlucky, they might encounter the water dragon King Guzan. Right at this moment, a sailor reported the discovery of black flag pirates on the ship, demanding gold as a toll fee for safe passage. They thought they would leave quickly this time, but they wanted to find someone who understood them, someone who often transported criminals. Indeed, one person was secretly carrying a passenger's luggage and immediately confessed to save his life. He immediately shouted loudly that they needed to find a fugitive, so if they cooperated fully, nothing would happen. Therefore, everyone lined up, but Hyun paid no attention to them as he was busy admiring the sea. Someone approached and attacked Hyun, who had to endure it because otherwise, it would lead to a big problem. The person below the boat also joined the fight, and the shock of their battle was strong enough to affect ordinary people. John had to use the AI sword technique to increase the speed of his attacks, but every attack was blocked by him. At this point, he also had the opportunity to strike, but was stopped by him, and a punch could knock him out. Then he turned to the remaining person, "You're Hong Deo-san, right? Just by looking at your expression, I can tell. So, I'll save you. But I have something to ask you." However, he immediately jumped into the water and ran away, clearly feeling protected by him, so he had to hand over the remaining person to Xion. Then he jumped straight into the water to hunt down the remaining person. Underwater was his territory. How could those thugs be opponents? He directly used them as stepping stones to move at lightning speed to rescue quickly. In no time, he caught up with the other person. The person must have been startled. Could he be the great master who could walk on water? He also fought directly upon surfacing. Then was knocked away by a single blow. He just wanted to ask him some questions, but this person thought he had come to hunt him down. Then he had to deal with the swimming thugs. Hyun stepped heavily, causing countless rocks and soil to fly up. He used it as a distraction to launch numerous attacks. Some fell, and the rest wanted to escape, but it was too late. They were struck down by the next lethal sword technique. Then he used the fake name Genie Gang again. He couldn't reveal his identity. What if he was related to those people? This guy was immediately shocked. "How do you know?" he asked. But his words were like a confession before being struck. He had to lightly massage him. Pretending not to know. In the distance, he saw a small boat. Seeing the scene was somewhat familiar, and that guy was beaten until unconscious. He had already woken up by then. Then, before he could confess, a large black dragon boat appeared. The lone mourner started a new way of acting. "Are you scared yet? Now get ready to die." Before he could finish his sentence, he was punched unconscious by Hyun. Then, he turned to Xion. "We have guests, so let's entertain them properly," he said, and the two immediately rushed to the black dragon. This news had reached the hands of Vo Min, the great warlord at Truongjiang, where battles were raging as enemies surged from the lower lines of Truongjiang. They demanded the opening of the river gate, a clear sign of impending disaster at Truongjiang. The cause was not him seeking revenge. He immediately issued orders for Long, the fleet leader, to move to the western entrance of Truongjiang, armed and ready. They couldn't afford to hand over the waterway to such weak enemies. The situation suggested the presence of the Water Dragon King. Additionally, the little dragon of their gang was nearby. At the same time, he was battling the black dragon, seemingly endless. Suddenly, someone approached their boat directly. It was the little dragon himself, a leader of their gang. They were ordered to retreat because from now on, their boat would be protected. Seeing him behave like an old friend, they mistook him for a foreigner. At that moment, a boat was approaching. The leader of the water dragon, Hyun, immediately ordered Zeon to change course and move under the small boat. An old man unleashed power, halting the boat. This was too overwhelming. Then, they directly approached them, and everyone had to respectfully greet the water dragon king. The black-clad bodyguards of his moved at a terrifying speed to capture the little dragon. But the water dragon king could discern in that moment Hyun's ability to grasp the old man's movements and aura. He even pretended to be an old man, so when did he acquire such skills? Someone of his stature would surely not pay attention to a mere pup with a dirty nose. He must have been wrong. His subordinate let the little dragon go, then exuded a threatening aura, forcing them to explain the situation. Hyun had to be cautious in his response. In truth, we were on a boat heading to Wuhan. But halfway there, enemies appeared, threatening innocent lives, so we were determined to rescue them. The explanation seemed to only enrage him further, so Hyun had to reveal his identity as the descendant of General Anben. Surely, you are not aware, but our general has absolutely no connection to the martial world. However, in the court, he holds considerable power. My father is currently under the king's orders to go to Namkin to care for the new prince. But the water dragon king seemed indifferent. What does it have to do with me? Hearing this made Hyun break out in a cold sweat. Indeed, intimidating his father would not work. I am a pirate, born and bred, and will remain so until death. Dealing with these two monsters is beyond my capabilities. My current strength, if unleashed, would result in smoke-filled altars a year from now, with only the scent to remind them of me. I recall my master's teachings, to invoke fear and bind one's opponent. One can offer what you like as a special favor. He then changed tactics, pleading for mercy. Why not let me compensate you instead? A generous gift, if you will. As a pirate, I'm sure this old man wouldn't refuse money. Despite his age, the old man burst into laughter, baffling him. Then, he approached and mentioned the interesting youngster. Around them, members of the Vo men had also arrived, yet they remained motionless. Why? They were calculating whether engaging would be advantageous or detrimental. Facing us directly would surely result in losses. According to the old man's words, he could undoubtedly sweep through this place. Earlier, he even wanted to negotiate with the old man to save everyone. The old man evaluated him, but despite his lack of power, he observed every move of the old man. He had to be checked directly by him afterward, prompting him to command his subordinates to act. However, his terrifying speed was intercepted by Hyun, rushing into battle with such a formidable opponent. He had to fight quickly and win in one round. Facing him directly would surely result in losses, as the power of spiritual energy correlates with purity, accumulating inexorably. Suddenly, the opponent smirked coldly. It turned out the water dragon king had been behind him, striking him unexpectedly, causing him to faint. The old man wanted to engage in combat, but the water dragon king subdued him with just a glance. To save his master, Hyun unleashed his hidden sword technique, then rushed to protect him. Even the old man recognized this individual's formidable potential, impossible to kill. Such outstanding talents, when matured, may achieve remarkable success. Just as the old man took a step, a tremendous shock shook the sea, waves rising tens of meters high, and they vanished. Hyun woke up smelling grilled meat around him. First, he had to fill his empty stomach. Whether he lived or died remained to be seen later. It turned out he had been taken away by the water dragon king. He didn't see the others and thought they had been killed by him. His eyes were full of murderous intent, but he had spared them and sent them to the main sex location. Namgung Ra's kid was slightly injured, but when he woke up, he would find his body in better condition. Although he harbored some deep resentment towards him, he wasn't so free as to stomp him. He then discarded the contempt and filled his hungry stomach with real food. At the same time, Xian at Weichuan was being treated. Fortunately, the water dragon king had spared his life. Otherwise, how could his small life be preserved? He didn't understand what the water dragon king was thinking, but with just this much pressure, he must have known it wouldn't be enough to penetrate his veins before leaving. He instructed the members of the gang to take care of him carefully. He had to quickly send a letter to Namgang Ra to inform him. When Kim Vong, the everyday peacekeeper, heard the news, he might jump up in anger. Meanwhile, both sides were leisurely drinking and eating grilled meat. The Water Dragon King was no different from a neighborhood old man, casually chatting. After learning that he was only 17 years old and already this strong, the old man was somewhat surprised and asked who his master was. If he answered Namgung Kim Vong, then only Dap Mo would have to say that his brother-in-law had taught him martial arts. Regardless, he was a member of the prison family of Hobak. This old man also understood the martial arts of the prison, which were refreshing and domineering, never soft and agile like him. In addition, the attacking tactics along with the internal and external energy techniques of this person are completely different from ordinary techniques. That feeling seemed fundamentally profound. The old man was very curious about him. The first time he saw such a strange method of operating energy, he decided to accept him as a disciple for real. If becoming his disciple, he would be spared if he acted cautiously and thought clearly about the mission to save the martial arts world. Now, taking the enemy as a master seemed a bit odd. He wanted to refuse, but the old man's demeanor and authority were too convincing, plus his eloquence. If he accepted him as a master, his father at home would be very disappointed. The Water Dragon King's face was now full of blue veins, ready to face him in the next round. Only cries of horror were heard. The old man's motto was very straightforward: if you can't talk, you can kick. After some thought, he finally had a strategy. He just said he would temporarily be the old man's disciple. The important thing now was to find that Sam guy to get information about the second holy artifact. Next, he said that if he became the old man's disciple, and word got out, many hostile eyes would turn towards him. If that happened, he would become a target, so he asked the old man to only guide him secretly. He would accumulate experience to become a true disciple in the future, worthy of the old man's fame. The old man was shocked, but delighted at the same time. This guy indeed had ambition. Then he threatened that if his previous words were lies, all related to him would be erased. Next, he turned to Deng, the tall, dark, smelly one, and gave orders to the guards at Truongjiang from now on. Hyun would be the young master. However, this matter must not be disclosed to anyone else. In addition, the attacking tactics along with the internal and external energy techniques of this person are completely different from ordinary techniques. That feeling seemed fundamentally profound. The old man was very curious about him. The first time he saw such a strange method of operating energy, he decided to accept him as a disciple for real. If becoming his disciple, he would be spared if he acted cautiously and thought clearly about the mission to save the martial arts world. Now, taking the enemy as a master seemed a bit odd. He wanted to refuse, but the old man's demeanor and authority were too convincing, plus his eloquence. If he accepted him as a master, his father at home would be very disappointed. The Water Dragon King's face was now full of blue veins, ready to face him in the next round. Only cries of horror were heard. The old man's motto was very straightforward: if you can't talk, you can kick. After some thought, he finally had a strategy. He just said he would temporarily be the old man's disciple. The important thing now was to find that Sam guy to get information about the second holy artifact. Next, he said that if he became the old man's disciple, and word got out, many hostile eyes would turn towards him. If that happened, he would become a target, so he asked the old man to only guide him secretly. He would accumulate experience to become a true disciple in the future, worthy of the old man's fame. The old man was shocked, but delighted at the same time. This guy indeed had ambition. Then he threatened that if his previous words were lies, all related to him would be erased. Next, he turned to Deng, the tall, dark, smelly one, and gave orders to the guards at Truongjiang from now on. Hyun would be the young master. However, this matter must not be disclosed to anyone else. Because I wanted to save people, but ended up punching the person I was trying to save, who could understand. I just wanted to extract information about the spiritual beasts from him, that's all. Indeed, he set many traps, but I had known for a long time, how could I be lured? The reason I could return from the hands of the Water Dragon King is also because my family is wealthy. If that's the case, then so be it. Master Min, be careful. This kid is indeed extraordinary. He's gathering talents to join the Team Long team, surely they can't overlook me when they see me. Upon a glance, he immediately agreed. Because in it are all his masters. Of course, I can't miss this opportunity and act accordingly. Haha, part 1 ends here.